Back for another edition of In the Huddle. Carl Dukes, put him up, along with my man, Brian Baldinger. Baldy's Breakdowns. You know Baldy from NFL Network. And, of course, Jason Lockon for a part of this podcast as well. We are so happy to have you checking us out again. And like us, subscribe, and watch us on YouTube, In the Huddle Pod, guys. Don't miss an episode. It's been a crazy week. And yesterday, legal tampering started, which means, guys, that these deals that you're hearing about have been done in principle. They have not been finalized until the new league year starts, which is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So we will get to all the deals that really captivated us and opened our eyes. But this is, to me, Baldy, one of the funnest times in the league. I mean, like, listen, the season is the season. But when you see major players changing teams and guys that could make a difference on a team that might be close or a team that's far away, and you go, man, he made the decision to go there, it changes the NFL. There's no other sport that has this in the offseason where major players change teams, and it has the effect that it does in the NFL ball.
Well, not just that, Carl, but if you think about, I mean, we'll get into this, in mass, but, to see a guy like Saquon Barkley leave the Giants and go right down the turnpike to the Eagles, in your own division where, it used to be, okay, you could trade a player or you could let it, but like the Eagles got better and the Giants got, now you could say, okay, they signed Devin Singletary. They know Devin from Buffalo, Joe Shane and Brian Dable. And, they know the kid. He had a decent year in Houston. But, I mean, it's like Saquon was the face of the franchise. He's the face of the New York Giants for the last 5 years. And for him to go to Philadelphia and, they wanted – and he's never run behind an offensive line that he's going to run behind.
True.
Philadelphia. I mean, Saquon might look like the Saquon that we saw his rookie year, and even better. Like, he's never seen holes the way he's going to see this year in a style, with Kellen Moore calling plays like he's going to see. Like, one team got severely weakened. The other team in their own division got severely strengthened.
Yeah, Howie Roseman, listen, I think he is the best general manager in professional football. First of all, longevity. He's been there a long time. The team has changed. They've been willing to move off of quarterbacks. We saw it. They've been willing to invest in areas where, hey, we're going to be great up front, both offensively and defensive lines. And now, the report is they're willing to move off of edge rusher Haason Reddick, Josh Sweat. And then in the process, to your point, they signed Barkley to a 3-year, $37 million deal. How are they doing this? Like, how is he playing this chess game, Baldy, with the way that he's maneuvered to maintain the fact that they still have great roster integrity, depth, and the team is still good. Meanwhile, the pieces are changing.
And they signed Bryce Huff.
Yep.
I mean, I Bryce Huff was my second most under the radar signing. I knew the Jets weren't going to keep. They gave him $51 million. I mean, he's never played 50% of the snaps. He's a productive player. He's been a part-time player. He's been really good at it the last 2 years. I nicknamed him the Bugatti. He puts it on his, because he's just an Italian race car coming off the edge. But, they get him. They get Zach Bond, who's a linebacker that they needed desperately. I mean, I don't know how he does it, but I know this. There's some teams that just are very creative accountants.
Yeah.
And some teams aren't. And if you can't play that game, Carl, it's going to be hard to compete. It's just going to be hard to compete. I mean, I said this the other day when the Chiefs re-signed Chris Jones for 5 more years. When you looked at him, they had $1 million to spend, and they gave him $95 million. So I don't know how they did it, and they're going to keep. It looks like they're going to have a chance to keep L'Jarius Sneed. They're the 2 best defensive players. Chris Jones. Not many teams have a Chris Jones. He's got guys a closer. He knows how to close out a game. Some teams, they're just very creative accountants, and there's other teams that are in salary cap hell, and you go, how? Like, who are they paying? Like the Patriots who were in salary before this year. Like I don't know. Even now, I don't know what the Patriots are really doing. Like, they didn't make any big splashes. It's signing, Kendrick Bourne or a couple offensive linemen, but like nobody really said, all right, well, here the Patriots are getting back to the AFC East. So some teams are just better at it, Carl.
Yeah. Brian Baldinger, Carl Dukes with you guys. We're talking about legal tampering, all the deals that are being announced. Again, won't become official until the league year starts tomorrow as we record this podcast. Let's talk about the running backs for a second. One that jumped out at me, Brian Gutekunst in Green Bay, right? We've talked about how they've handled Jordan Love and all these situations. They've got a young roster. They move away from Aaron Jones and go out immediately and sign Josh Jacobs. But you're talking about the running backs, a lot of running backs being snatched up. Baldy, this is completely different than what it was last year. I mean, last offseason, you and I were having conversations, and Jason, about what the hell is going on with the running back market. All of a sudden, these guys are getting deals. Josh Jacobs, 4 years, $48 million to Green Bay. And that one kind of jumped out at me because they didn't waste any time in replacing Aaron Jones.
No, they have a plan. They have a plan. And, Josh Jacobs is 25 years old. He's 25 years old. He led the league in rushing 2 years ago. They feel like they're upgrading. A.J. Dillon is gone. So they've gotten rid of, moved on from two guys. And look, Aaron Jones has been as productive as anybody from that famous 2017 class with McCaffrey and Fournette, and Kamara. And there was Aaron Jones in the 5th round. They got their money's worth out of Aaron Jones. They've given him a second contract. He'll find a spot. But they had a plan. They went after Xavier McKinney, and they have never been big players in free agency. 1 year, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith. But basically, they sit on the sideline. Right now, you know what this says to me? We've got a young core around a quarterback we believe in. We're going to upgrade wherever we can upgrade right now. And we're going to compete for the NFC North title. And we're going to do it with Josh Jacobs. We're going to hand it off to him. He's a great kid. Got a smile on his face every day. He got paid. I mean, he's got to deal with some cold weather right now, Carl.
Yeah.
And we saw him in a snowsuit yesterday. He looks like he's already, bundling up, getting ready for, the tundra.
Were you surprised at these backup quarterbacks and how this played out? For example, Mac Jones gets traded from New England to Jacksonville. And a lot of people, right, who watch football and pay attention, they go, wait a minute, you got Trevor Lawrence. What played into all of these quarterbacks, specifically the backups, being signed, or at least, coming to terms and agreeing to terms yesterday? That kind of surprised me as well.
Well, I mean, it was the injuries. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, 4 plays, Deshaun Watson. I mean, he just goes around the league, and the guys that went down, and, thank God that Cleveland got Joe Flacco off the couch, from Haddonfield, New Jersey. I just think the backup quarterback, I mean, Gardner Minshew started 13 games for the Colts, won 7 games, played very well. I mean, there he is. He looks like they're going to pay him to be a starter.
Yeah.
I think the backup quarterback market, no longer do people say, okay, the starter is untouchable. We've got to have a guy, no matter what happens, no matter what the durability has been to a guy, we better make sure we're in good shape with what we have at that position. And so we saw, throughout, we saw, obviously, the Mac Jones trade, Jacoby Brissett going back to New England.
Yep.
Baker re-signing, which is a good signing. But so Tyrod Taylor, going across the river here to the New York Jets, right down the turnpike. Sam Darnold. I mean, that's what it said to me. And I think Tannehill will probably get signed. And, I think we'll see a couple other guys go here today at some point. Josh Dobbs probably gets signed. But teams better all right, we better get ourselves covered because you can't rely on this anymore.
Yeah, what's funny, Baldy, is the reactions to these signings or guys leaving teams. Sauce Gardner tweeted out yesterday, my timeline looks like it's a Madden franchise going on. And he's talking about the Madden franchise game where, you get all this movement. And he's laughing emoji. I mean, Breece Hall, look at all these O-lineman signings. And he's like, eyes. It's funny because guys pay attention to what's going on. Even if it's not with their team, Baldy, they see their boys or they see guys they know around the league moving around. And that's also a cool part of this is how guys react to other guys leaving, isn't it?
It's reality TV, and it plays out in real time. I mean, I had guys from the Eagles yesterday texting me, can you believe – they actually signed Bryce Huff before they got Saquon. Yeah. And they're texting me going, is Saquon next? They're listening to all the rumors. Forget about the deals. They're listening to the rumors going, is Saquon really coming? I don't know these things. But I was getting text messages throughout the day. I was on from 11 till 3 o'clock when a lot of this was getting started and it was being generated. And I was texting Max Crosby, hey, you got a dog inside. And Christian Wilkins now,
Yeah.
It's gonna be a little bit harder to block you now, Max. That was. They're all watching, Carl. It's the league. It's gonna be building up to the draft and pro days and all that. But these, even how they even phrase this period right now, where you can begin to negotiate. It doesn't become official till tomorrow. So, but still, the money's flying out the door. Everybody's seeing who's getting paid, how much they're getting paid. There's reverberations throughout all 32 teams at every level.
Micah Parsons, this made me laugh yesterday. When Saquon tweeted out the two Eagles, right? Two
right.
Eagle emojis. Micah Parsons responded, "Sickening," and laughing emojis, right?
Yeah.
And then today, for example, we just talked about Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, guys, intends to sign with the Vikings. 1 year, $7 million deal. Drew Rosenhaus is his agent. So he leaves Green Bay, goes to Minnesota. This in division thing, like there's payback there, right? Like you talked about with Saquon to the Eagles. You don't think Aaron Jones wants to destroy the Packers when they play now? I mean, that's another cool element when you see these guys change teams within their own division.
No doubt about it. No question. And so, Minnesota moved on from, their running back situation. And so they needed a guy, and Aaron Jones can still play at a high level. He's a great fit. He still is almost perfect hitting any hole that gets created up front. So, it's paybacks and letting the other teams know, and seeing them twice a year. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to these guys.
All right, we're coming back, and when we do, they signed a veteran quarterback, but a young quarterback who we thought had a market hasn't been signed. We're going to talk about it next on In the Huddle. Back on In the Huddle, Carl Dukes along with Brian Baldinger. Baldy, let's talk about Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons. The rumors were out there. A lot of people were saying this won't happen. He's not going to leave Minnesota. Minnesota's going to pay him 4 years, $180 million, $100 million guaranteed. And the cool thing is, I think the Falcons did the right thing in structuring this up front. First 2 years, 45. Third year, it's $10 million. There's your 100 guaranteed. Fourth year is not guaranteed. He has incentives to reach 180. But the fact is, this is really a 3-year deal. If you want to get out of it, even after 2, it's not going to kill you in the cap. But 3 years with Cousins. Talk to me about what you think about the decision. What do the Vikings maybe do now? And how does this look from the Falcons standpoint? Because I'm here in Atlanta. A lot of people were mixed on it. There's a fear about coming off of this Achilles injury, despite what Cousins has been able to do.
Well, I think the deal really went down. Minnesota was very interested, but they weren't going to sign him to a 4-year deal. And Atlanta's willing to give him the 4-year and structure it the way you just described. That was what really swung it. Is Kirk Cousins got a young family. He's looking for security like all players, and that's what free agency is. Give me the upfront money, and I think Minnesota just wasn't comfortable giving a player coming off Achilles at his age, going, all right, with his playoff record, which is 1-3 as a starter, 1 win in Minnesota against the New Orleans Saints 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, that's it. You're getting a very solid player, but one that has not excelled. So that was really, to me, what swung the deal was, all right, Atlanta's willing to give him 4. Kwesi in Minnesota, the general manager, was not willing to do it. And so he took off and went to Atlanta. And I think that's what it was. Now, does that give Atlanta the heads up to go win this division next year? Maybe. I mean, Baker re-signing in Tampa certainly has a chance to repeat with Mike Evans coming back and all those kind of things. Look, Atlanta was in the hunt. Atlanta was in the hunt, Carl. You'll remember this. And they played Carolina and lost 10-7. And, Desmond Ridder threw one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen.
Yeah.
One of those plays that sticks in your mind, and you just go, we can't live with this. Like, this is not we can't do this for our fans, for our team. We can't do this. Like, the lowly Carolina Panthers are beating us, in large part because of this horrendous decision. And that's what you saw. And Raheem Morris said, he said very soon, after the season when he got hired, I'm here in large part because, our quarterback situation here in Atlanta.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me about that terrible play. And the crazy thing is, at its best right now, if you get Kirk Cousins at his best, and everybody does what we think they can, and Drake London and Bijan and Kyle Pitts, who was coming off the injury last year, the idea is this team can score a lot of points. And, Algier and all the weapons you have, they just didn't have a delivery system to get the ball to those weapons consistently. So you get that in Cousins. And I think, people look at Cousins and they say, well, wait a minute. At its height in Minnesota, he had Jefferson and all these guys. He had a great tight end. He had Dalvin Cook. And they weren't able to get over the hump. So there is a concern there, like, okay, this dude's been there, but maybe this situation is different. I will tell you, Baldy, the one thing I am not worried about, and I was explaining this to Atlanta yesterday, and that is the symmetry with Zach Robinson, who's the offensive coordinator coming over from the Rams. Him and Kevin O'Connell running very similar systems coming under Sean McVay. This is like being ahead of the ball game. He's coming in, and there's not a lot of terminology that he's going to have to learn. I think the symmetry there is going to get him ahead of the game, and it may give this offense a chance to be good really early versus studying all offseason, getting into camp, trying to figure out what's going on. That is going to be a good thing for Kirk Cousins and the Falcons.
I don't think there's any question about that, Carl. I mean, if you want to make the analogy, I mean, Baker fitting in with Dave Canales last year in Tampa, it didn't take off right away, but by midseason they were playing pretty good football. It might happen a little quicker, but you get the offseason, you get all the mini camps, you get the OTAs. You get your private workouts that quarterbacks will set up with your guys. So look, they got a guy that knows how to play the position. I think a lot of people saw a lot of things about Kirk Cousins they liked in the Netflix series last year that maybe they didn't know.
Sure,
the family man, just maybe the sense of humor, just the way he fits in with the team. I think they're getting all of that, which is good. I don't think it. I think he still has, like all these quarterbacks that haven't won the postseason. That's kind of how you get measured. I mean, there was one point a couple years ago in Minnesota. He goes, "Look, I'm a 500 quarterback, meaning I have the same number of wins as losses." And he's a little bit bigger than that now because they've had some success in Minnesota. But I mean, that's kind of what he has been. And yet, he's got these guaranteed deals and a lot of money, and which the money is, that's all business. That's separate. They should be better offensively this year than they've been. And so now let's see what they can do, in a division that looks like it might be a little bit better than the worst division in football as it was a year ago.
Baldy, let's talk about the other side of this, because there were two quarterbacks that were believed to be the two guys that at least the Falcons and other teams were interested in. It was Cousins and it was Justin Fields. Fields has been the starter in Chicago for 3 years. Young, athletic, I think lots of upside, but he doesn't have a team right now that the Bears can trade him to. He is still a part of the Bears. I do not think they keep him with the number 1 overall pick. People have talked about the scenario, well, they'll have him and they'll have Caleb Williams. It makes no sense. You're trying to move him. I just think the market has shrunk. And I am very curious to see how this plays out now that Cousins is in Atlanta and people know that that is off the market. That's not going to happen. Where is he going to end up? And why are we here with Fields? Is it that perception around the league that he is just not that good? Or is it that teams are afraid to take a chance with a guy who has been inconsistent in Chicago and maybe not shown that he can be a franchise quarterback?
I think that's got to be part of it, Carl. I mean, we just have to, I love Justin Fields, and I think the trajectory is still up.
Yep.
But if you look at, say, the Las Vegas Raiders, they've got Luke Getsy there, who just coached them the last few years in Chicago, last 2 years. They needed a quarterback. They went out and signed Gardner Minshew. We all like what he did last year, 7-6 to starter. He's been a career base. He's had a chance to start. We kind of look at him as a backup quarterback, but very capable. I mean, the Raiders, like for right now, Justin Fields' contract, he still has 2 years left on his rookie deal. He's got a very affordable contract. If you look at it, Carl, it's like $3 or $4 million this year, and a balloon that comes due next year for like $25 million.
Right.
But you get basically a year for Justin Fields to see if he could be that guy. And the Raiders chose not to. They went, okay, we'll take Gardner and what we saw. He's 24 years old, Carl. Like these teams, like if I was the Jets, if I was the Giants,
right,
go give me Justin Fields on his rookie contract this year and let him learn from Aaron Rodgers, let him learn from Daniel Jones, whatever. Let him compete with Daniel Jones. I don't understand it, but I'll say this: it looks like it's kind of we got to see what happens today and tomorrow. This thing might be a slow play out, but there's no way if Chicago takes Caleb Williams, in 6 weeks from now, that you want Justin Fields on the roster. I mean, you want this to be, we're going with you, we're riding with you, Caleb, you're our guy. We're going to start the way Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville did, the way Joe Burrow in Cincinnati did. We're going to start with you as our quarterback. Yeah. You don't want Justin Fields hanging around, and you get the split locker room, and all the media is going to ask all those questions you got to ask. You just don't want that. So it could slow play between now and the draft. They don't have to just unload them, but they do have to unload them.
Yeah. And 3 or 4 weeks ago, Baldy, we were talking about this a little bit on the podcast, and because we were waiting to see where all this was going, but there was interest. There was interest from multiple teams, and I feel like the combine, teams went to the combine, and whatever teams may have been on him started to wane. I know that's what happened with the Falcons, because they got there and were like, okay, hey, we want to see these young quarterbacks, but we're interested in bringing in a veteran. And it's not necessarily Fields. I think a lot of teams started to back away, and we're going to see what happens. But I'm with you. I think whatever team he ends up with, is going to get a good young player with a lot of upside. And if given the opportunity with right coaching, he has a chance to be, I think, a really good player in this league. But Paul, you and I both know this. It's about where you go, and it's about the coaching, right? Yeah. Where you go and the coaching. And if it's crap and you go to a crap situation and the coach is not there long, and now you got this revolving door, which what's happened in Chicago with him, it's hard to overcome that regardless of how good you are. People want to talk about Patrick Mahomes, and I always say this. Patrick Mahomes got drafted, set behind a veteran for a year, and his head coach is Andy Reid. It doesn't get any better than that. Like, the circumstances surrounding Mahomes, yes, he's great, but give me a break. He went to a perfect situation. Very seldom does that happen with these young quarterbacks where they get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. You're completely right, Carl. And so that's what Justin needs. He needs the right situation. And it really can't, like the contract will take care of itself when you prove that you can really play at a high level. But you need a guy that's committed, that believes in you, that adjusts the offense, that you have stability. Coaches aren't coming in and out. Coordinators aren't being changed. There's just very few stable situations in this league. And it's like I say every year, when we start the season in September, Carl, there's really 8 teams that are going to compete. 8 teams are going to compete for the championship. There's going to be 20, 24 teams out there. It's just going to be another year of just, okay. I mean, there was teams this year, Carl. The season was over by the time we got in October. It was already over. Yeah. And you're already thinking, the fan base is already looking to next year's draft, and so, but yes, stability, continuity, coaching, team building. There's very few teams that know how to build a team, sustain a team. And so all quarterbacks can fall through, a lot of quarterbacks can fall through the cracks. Baker Mayfield just went through it. He just went through it going to Carolina, and that just a cesspool of change. And he got to a reasonably stable place with a good general manager, and a good coach, and he exceeded. And he succeeded.
When we come back, he finds a new home, and I'm going to share with you what I was told. We'll tell you about that when we come back on In the Huddle. Carl Dukes, Brian Baldinger with you. It's In the Huddle. Subscribe, like us, and watch us on YouTube, guys. In the Huddle pod. I want to take a minute and talk about Russ. Russell Wilson. 1-year deal with the Steelers. Now, Baldy, we had heard, I think a couple of weeks back, that the Steelers were not interested in bringing in a significant free agent to challenge Kenny Pickett. And then they did. And so Russ goes from a situation in Denver where obviously we now know the circumstances there. We've discussed it on the podcast, guys, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is this like the perfect place for Russ?
Yes, it is. And I think it's perfect. I thought the Raiders could have been a great place too, be honest with you, because he could really go up against Denver twice a year and really try to stick it to them, because like that's part of it. I mean, they're paying the salary, $1.2 million. Like, I got to believe that Pittsburgh isn't just handing him the ball. I got to believe there's going to be some level of competition.
Sure.
Kenny Pickett. I mean, Russell Wilson doesn't look like the Russell Wilson of 4 years ago to me, but he played much better this year. I texted a guy in the front office in Pittsburgh when the deal looked like it was going down. And I said, are you getting a committed? Are you getting a genuine Russell Wilson? When you sat in there and you talked to him, did he seem genuine? Did he seem committed? Was he all in? And all I got was yes, yes, yes. Now, okay, but I think it's a great situation. He's got a great coach. He's got a new general manager. They've got an organization that's committed to winning, knows how to win, knows what it looks like. They've got star defensive power. They've got some young receivers that need an adult. You know, I think George Pickens can learn from Russell Wilson. I remember when DK Metcalf came out, and people said, he's a one-trick pony. He's just a fast guy. Well, DK Metcalf became a serious threat. Aaron Lockett, like some of these guys really excelled with Russell. And so I think these, we'll see what Deontay Johnson, if he's on board, whatever. But I think some of these guys can really learn from Russell. And like I said, I think I'd be surprised if Arthur Jones just gives him the job. I think there's going to be some level of competition, but I expect Russell to be the quarterback. You're getting him for nothing. I mean, you can't lose right here.
Yeah, to your point about what you're getting, I got that same reaction from people there about, and maybe the Denver situation ultimately ends up being good for us. Listen, sometimes guys get self-absorbed, okay? You get a big fat contract, you're feeling yourself, you're Super Bowl champion. I'm coming in here and I'm going to do things my way, and I got my people and a secretary and my workout space and my trainers, and sometimes you just have to take a step back and go, I'm going to be a team guy. I'm going to do whatever my teammates are doing. I'm going to involve myself in the team. I think that was a real concern with any of these teams that may have wanted to sign Russ. But I'm with you, Baldy. I think it's a perfect situation. If anybody can handle this, it's my team. If anybody can get his mind right or get in him maybe to motivate him a different way, I think Sean Payton went about it the wrong way. That's just me. I think it's my team. So I agree with you. I don't know what the Steelers are going to do, but I also know that, to your point, what have the Steelers always done? Run the football and play defense. So if they do that, Russ can be really good, because guess what they did in Seattle when he was really good? Run the football and play defense. So I think from that standpoint, he could have real success. The question for me is, if he does have a big year and proves himself, what happens? Because then you've got to make a decision on a guy you drafted in the first round and pick it, or do you stay the course? Like that's an interesting scenario, which, again, Steelers have plenty of time to figure it out. But I think, like, future, as you think about what your future is going to be there, who the quarterback's going to be, what if Russ balls out? Like, that brings up a really interesting question.
Well, I mean, he's 35, so he's going to turn 36, I think, during the season. It's not like he's getting any younger. But, you're in the AFC North, where there's Lamar and there's Burrow, okay, and there's Deshaun Watson. I mean, this is an expensive quarterback fraternity in the AFC North. I mean, at the very highest, rate, these guys are all getting paid. But they're all being led by those guys, And so only Lamar, out of, the four teams, only Lamar was able to stay healthy this year. And so health is a big part. And so Russell stayed healthy in Denver, had a bounce back season, a lot of egos in Denver. I think you're right, though. Look, Sean Payton can run things the way he wants to run them. That's fine. We'll see how that turns out. I know this. Some of these coaches are a lot better when they get great quarterback play, great consistent quarterback play over a long time. And when they don't get it, Jimmy Johnson went to Miami, didn't look like a Hall of Fame coach. When he had Troy Aikman, sure did look like a Hall of Fame coach. So, some of these guys, you're as good as your quarterback. Bill Belichick didn't look like the greatest coach of all time without Tom Brady. And I'm not taking anything away from what else they do, but this quarterback carousel spins every year for a reason.
Yeah, it does.
You better get one to just have a chance to compete. And if you want to win, Mahomes is there's one, and everybody else is looking up at the guy right now.
Let's talk about two guys that have not come to an agreement with any team yet, and that is Danielle Hunter, shocking, and Derrick Henry. Now, some people may think Derrick Henry is washed because he has a lot of carries, behind him. But we saw the running backs and guys coming off the board yesterday. So Danielle Hunter and Derrick Henry, the Vikings, they signed a bunch of defensive guys yesterday. They agreed to terms with a bunch of defensive guys. If you're Brian Flores, the DC there, you got to be happy to say, okay, hey, we got some guys that can get pressure. We know Hunter's not coming back. He's going to test the market. I just feel like those two guys are like vets that can help a team, and yet there's no agreement. Now, today we could see them come to agreement with somebody, but Baldy, does that surprise you a little bit?
Yeah. I had Danielle Hunter as my top free agent. He came off a phenomenal season. I texted a couple right tackles in the league going, give me, what don't I see about Danielle that you have to deal with when you prepare to go up against him? Like every one of them was extremely complimentary about how slippery he is, the effort, the length, all the things, and then he's coming off his best season. And he's not coming off his best season because Brian Flores was the coordinator. It helped that Brian was in some of the things he does scheme-wise. But Danielle is a great player, and he's still young, And so I think he's only 29 years old, but been in the league a long time and coming off his best season. He had 16 and a half sacks, 4 forced fumbles, was on a good defense. So I'm sure, I don't know what the situation is, but I expect, Washington, some of these teams that look defensive line starved this year, I think some teams are waking up today going, Danielle's still there. Like, let's take a run. Let's see what it takes to get him. Because the big money to Bryce, to Bryce Huff, to Jonathan Greenard, to Christian Wilkins, the big money, Chris Jones, the big money looked like it left yesterday. I'm curious because I don't think Danielle Hunter is going to be out there very long today.
Yeah. You know who else is surprising? And maybe not because they made Roquan the highest paid linebacker in the league. Patrick Queen. We're talking about a guy that's a 2-time All-Pro. He's 24 years old. And, the Ravens, again, you got to make tough decisions. But I'm like, this guy's a dude. He can play. So,
I expect that today, this is what I expect. I'm not making any predictions, Carl. But, Mike McDonald leaves Baltimore, head coach in Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle just is not re-signing Bobby Wagner. Jordan Brooks, the other inside linebacker, just signed yesterday. Like, I expect Patrick Queen to be in Seattle at some point today, with Mike McDonald. So, or maybe Mike McDonald sees a flaw in Patrick Queen's game that we don't see because of Roquan. He became a much better player, the day that Roquan was traded for in Baltimore. But, yes, his age, his speed, his production, I don't think – that's where I think he's going to end up in Seattle.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And then Calvin Ridley also. Jags, 76 catches, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns in his first season. He's 29. Remember, he missed a season after being suspended from the NFL. But Ridley, I'm curious to see where he ends up because this is a deep wide receiving class in the draft, Baldy. We know that. So a lot of these teams may be waiting for the draft when it comes to all of these wide receivers. T. Higgins is asking for a trade, and I'm not sure where he's going to end up.
It's not a good market for wide receivers. There's so many good ones. Honestly, some of this, what has happened yesterday and will happen today, Carl, is a reflection of what's coming in the draft.
Yeah.
Like you saw some interior offensive linemen get signed. You didn't see many tackles get signed because this is the best tackle draft that anybody can remember coming at us. There's 12 that could go in the first 2 rounds. So the receivers are coming in waves, right? And so, it's interesting that Calvin Ridley is out there, yet Jacksonville goes out and they sign Gabriel Davis and they sign Devin Duvernay. Like they're saying, not only aren't we interested in re-signing Calvin Ridley, we're going to go take 2 guys that look like they were just guys last year in Duvernay. And I know Duvernay's give you some, kickoff return ability like he had in Baltimore. But and then I like Devin, but to take Devin Duvernay and Gabriel Davis, who seemed like he disappeared for long stretches last year in Buffalo, and to say, okay, we're going to make them part of our receiving core. Might be something there with Calvin Ridley that a lot of teams just aren't comfortable with right now.
Yeah. It's been a crazy couple of days. It will be a crazy week. It's not over, as Baldy was saying. There's plenty more that's going to happen between now and the end of the week, and we are all over it. It's in the Huddle, guys. Subscribe, like us. We're coming back to talk about what happens over the next couple of days at the end of the week and kind of figure out now, once teams get settled in and we get past this week and next week free agency market, then it's all about the draft. And that's when teams really change. And we know that's when you get guys that either play immediately and contribute. And we like to use the term, right? They hit, Baldy, teams hit in the draft, or you don't. And if you don't hit, guys, you're probably not going to the playoffs. I mean, I don't care what you do in free agency if you don't hit in the draft. So it's going to be a fun time. Baldy, by the way, how much have you dove into the draft at this point? What are you doing there? And can people look for stuff from you when you go to the draft?
Yeah, I'm going to start. I've been putting some breakdowns out. I just did one of Rome Odunze. I'm a big fan.
Me too.
But Cooper Beebe in Kansas State just did some. I'm going to be putting stuff out there periodically. What's kind of cool, Carl, is everybody has their alumni of certain colleges. Like, for example, somebody just hit me up yesterday. And they're like, man, you checked out this running back from Louisville. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I know the starter, but there's a backup every day. So guys are just throwing names out at me.
Yeah.
And you're like, I got all the college tape. I'll go take a look at this kid. They say, he's Rodney Hampton. The Giants should sign him.
Okay.
So like I'm getting into it. I'm looking at probably 5 to 10 guys a day right now, putting stuff out there. Kind of building, I feel like pretty comfortable with the first round guys. So, day by day, I'm getting a little bit deeper and deeper into the draft.
Yeah. And by the way, Odunze, dude, he's a stud.
Yeah.
I mean, he's big. He's bigger than I thought he was, Baldy. That's number one. Like, I didn't think he was
big, but big and smooth, super smooth, unbelievable, catches everything with his hands. I'm comparing him because you don't want to compare guys, but you want some kind of a comp.
Sure.
Like Garrett Wilson has come in and has exploded in this league, and everybody loves Garrett Wilson. But to me, he looks like a bigger, stronger, faster Garrett Wilson. I mean that's pretty complimentary, but that's where he's at right now.
Well, we got a lot more to get to, guys. Like us, subscribe. And we appreciate you being here. Baldy, we'll talk later in the week. We'll see what happens over the next couple of days. And we'll be talking about it with you guys here on In the Huddle. Everybody have a great day.